Gonzaga Nation SI, the Gonzaga Nation Media Network. I'm Dan Dickau. Adam Morrison, as we always have, 2 episodes a week, usually 15, 20 minutes, chat on all things Gonzaga. We haven't been in person for a good bit. Our schedules haven't aligned, so it's good to sit here and be able to chat about it in person. But interesting season right now. 8-3. They just came off 3 wins at home: Kent State, UW, and then Northern Illinois. We don't need to recap the Kent State because that seems like, honestly, it seems like a month ago now after the Huskies and then the Huskies. What are your thoughts right now after the UW and the Northern Illinois game?
Well, I was impressed with how we bounced back from the rough start that we had against UW. We started 1 for 10. That 2-3 zone can be funky if you don't run, your offense right. I always say you got to get penetration with the pass is the term I've always heard, and I think it's true. Obviously you got to punch gaps against the zone, against the dribble, but if you can make passes that collapse the zone, you'll get whatever you want. And to start the game, we obviously didn't do that. We had 3 offensive fouls in the transition. Yeah. So that took us out of sorts, which you understand. I think one was bad on Anton, and then the other one was legit, but I think the first one was bad. But I was impressed with how we broke that defense down eventually, and then we shot, I think it was 51% on the game. So then from a 1 for 10 start, we probably shot it around 60 or 55 throughout. It was interesting because I thought there'd be a little bit more juice for that game in the building, and it was kind of like where we had to create our own energy a little bit. But I was impressed with how they bounced back from a poor start, didn't freak out, and then started getting wide open shots and making them.
Yeah, that was. I made this comment on air last night with Fox and Heister. That first 4 or 5 minutes against UW, that is the worst stretch I can think of for a Gonzaga team in a long time.
Yeah, no, it was bad.
The crowd was great, and then to start the game, and then that stretch that we just chatted about kind of took all the energy out of the building, like you mentioned. And there was no energy last night.
No.
And rightfully so for the students. It's finals week, and Ken Palm had, I think, Northern Illinois 308.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where as a young player, which a lot of these guys still are, or as a very accomplished player like Drew Timme, you tend to look at the scouting report and not necessarily buy into everything. Mm-hmm. At least I look back at some of games in my career like, oh, we're going to win by 40. That wasn't the case last night when you played the team out of the MAC. But when you look at a game like that, what was your biggest challenges? Was it the scouting report at hand? Was it listening to what the coaching staff is wanting to you guys as the Gonzaga team to do? What was the biggest challenge in those games?
To be frank, and this is not just to make myself sound better, but I never looked at a game and just be like, oh, we're going to win by 30. These guys suck.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And when we were there, we were always kind of we weren't as established as a group like this or the teams before.
True.
So we never really had that, and we never blew people out by 40. I mean, I don't remember a game where we won by 40.
I think we had one.
That's what I'm saying. We were always up by 15, and then 20 was a blowout for us, and now it's kind of commonplace for Gonzaga. If you look at just some of the lines that come across before the game, you're like 32, like holy shit, it's crazy. So I never dealt with that, but I can see how this team and the teams before, I'm talking 5 years, with Kisperts and, all the pro guys, those teams that were winning by 40, scoring 100 points a game or 95 a game, how they could fall into that trap. Our staff was good. Leon Rice would always do weird things where he would...
I can only imagine.
Well, it was good stuff. He would put press clippings on your, in the locker room on your chair, and he would, from the whatever times of the place where we're playing, and then he'd this guy said this, and then you come back and find out years after I'm done it was false. Guy didn't say anything, but he would get you kind of riled up. So yeah, I don't know, I guess if I'm looking from a Drew Timme standpoint, if I went into that game, I'd be like, all right, I got to try to get to 25 as quickly as I can. Not in a selfish way, but we should be off the floor with 12 minutes to go. That's kind of what it has been in the past. But credit to Northern Illinois. I mean, that the Williams kid or whatever, he
was good.
He was really good. And then the other kid, Crump, had 20. You know what I'm saying? So, like, played hard and they ran stuff. You know what I'm saying? We've seen a lot of teams that have been in that 300 level, 250 and above, that kind of just play dead. I always respect teams that come in and at least try to run something and play with a little bit of spark. So they did that. And frankly, this team this year is not... we're not like a Mike Tyson punch knockout type of team. We can beat you, obviously, and we can win by 25. We can win by 20, but we can't go on a 19-0 run like we have in the past.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they're getting better defensively, but they don't have the ability to create steals and get easy buckets like other teams in the past. Hunter Salas is becoming one of the best defensive players in the country on the perimeter from what I've seen. But the solid defense from, man you ball, score over me, that's pretty much what everybody else is.
Yeah.
And so you don't have that spurt ability of being able to get that, like you mentioned, a 19-0 run.
Yeah.
But with that, do you find yourself when you're watching these games, like there's times the offense looks clunky, but then you look up and they still shoot 55% from the field. They're still like top 5 in Ken Palm offensive efficiency. What is it, or can you even put your finger on anything right now? Because I'm looking at a lot of different things, and I can't put my finger on one specific thing.
I don't know. I mean, it's like I said, we're good, obviously. The analytics side of it says we are, and that's very important because, when you go into seeding, obviously you know this, but they look at Ken Palm and all that stuff. I just don't think we have like a Corey Kispert that can make 8 threes in a game. Doesn't mean like Rasheer can't do that. You get what I'm saying? It's not a knock, or even Julian, but like we just, I guess from the perimeter aspect, we don't have a guy that just can go off. So maybe that's why. I don't know, man. Like it's not. I don't think the offense is broken. That's what's so weird by even talking about this. It's like, well, we're still scoring in the 80s, and we're shooting around. I think the last time I looked was like 50 to 51%. And then I think at 35 to 36 from 3, it's like, well, what else do we want?
Well, I think it's part of the thing where we've gotten spoiled for so long.
I know, but so that's the point. Like we can't be prisoners of our own success. We can't, knock this team just because they're, not shooting at a 55% clip and almost 40 and shooting 80 from the line or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So like we're still in the 80s. We still can score the basketball. It's just, it's just not as prolific as the years past. But also, I'm like, if you look at a lot of programs, they would cut their arm off to have the numbers that we have and win games. So like, I just hate going through. They're like, well, it's Julian Strother's not as good as Corey Kispert right now, so that's why. You know what I mean? Because I feel like I'm knocking players for no reason.
Yeah, but and that is difficult, and I don't like to knock players for any particular reason. You've seen growth, or I've seen growth in Julian's game each year.
Yeah,
but people are remembering Corey Kispert down the stretch of his senior year when he was an All-American. They're not remembering his freshman, sophomore year when he was scratching trying to get minutes and he couldn't make a pick and roll read. There's progressions, and I just think there's so many players in new roles and responsibilities that they haven't all gelled yet.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, there's, especially on the perimeter, there's guys that, played last year but didn't play as big a meaningful minutes or roles. And Malachi's new, obviously. Rasheer has played good at times, and he's just struggling to make shots right now. He's, which is understandable. Everybody goes through those lulls, so you just got to figure out a way to either get to the free throw line, just make shots. I mean, that's really what it is. And then I think for Julian, he's better when he shoots at least 12 times a game. There's some nights when he shoots like 5 or 6, and I'm always just shaking my head. It's not a knock on him. He lets the game come to him. I'm like, man, you should be a little bit more selfish. Like the other night, he was 7 of 14, had 18. It was great. You know what I'm saying? Like last night, I think he took, 4 field goal attempts, if my memory serves?
Yeah, he was, I don't want to say 4. Hesitant, but he was kind of, pedestrian. He wasn't searching.
But my point is, like, it's not a knock. The knock comes from you need to be more selfish in a good way. And so, if you take into account, new guys on the perimeter. Nolan Hickman's one of them. Obviously, Andrew Nemhard played. How many minutes did Andrew play last year? 37. And it was like, I don't even want to take him out. It was like when you and I, our last years there, we're like, I'm only taking you out so you can like get a drink of water, and then you're coming right back in.
Sandwiched around a media timeout to get a little bit more time.
Exactly. So, I think the quote unquote discrepancies offensively are from guys that haven't played as many meaningful roles as last year. But again, I think we're splitting hairs here when we're talking about a top 5 team in efficiency. And so, like, what are we comparing him to? The team, like, it's like, okay. So I think at some point we have to be like, well, they're still scoring the basketball just because we're not. And then also, like, here's the point that I like to bring up too is like, well, doesn't everybody get tired of watching 40-point blowouts? Like, it's kind of fun when we're up 15 and the game's still in balance.
Yeah. I know for our
win,
TV side, it gives us something else to talk about.
Yeah.
We don't like search back the record books and start telling stories where, unfortunately, sometimes we can get off on a different tangent. With you, it's probably a little different because, Huddy drives the narrative on the game.
Yeah.
But you still, in a blowout, you have a chance to kind of go off on different ideas, right?
Yeah. No, there's times we go multiple possessions and we don't even talk about the game, or we just said the Gonzaga scored, we're just talking because it's, 45-point blowout. And that happens a lot in the West Coast Conference, especially, recent years. So I don't know, like, I don't think there's a problem with the offense. I don't think there's, guys that don't have the ability to make it better. I don't know, because I feel uncomfortable even. It's not that I don't want to knock guys because they're 18 to 22-year-old kids. I don't give a shit what they think about me, right? But it's like, if you really look at their numbers, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? You see the point I'm trying to make? It's like,
for sure.
I'm like, well, it's not like we're scoring in the 65s and can't make a shot and we're shooting 42%. There's a lot of teams that are like that. Then we could be like, these guys should have worked in the summer and blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, well, they're still top 5 and they get good shots and they make most of them.
So to transition to more of a positive outlook, for me, I think the 2 biggest kind of jumps in progression from game 1 to game 11 is Hunter Salas and Ben Gregg. I mean, those to me are the obvious ones. Is that what you're seeing? And if you agree or disagree, what is it about those 2 or somebody else that you like?
I think Hunter's done an excellent job of finding his role and his niche on this team as far as being, being a defensive guy. We knew that coming in. He's actually not a bad jump shooter. He just doesn't shoot a bunch. But, for the most part, they've been going in, and you can tell that he's worked on it. I mean, he was 3 for 3 the other night. Knocked down a 3 against, I think that was UW game. And then he had that big stretch where he blocked a shot, saves it, goes down, does a Euro and 1 or Euro in transition. Mm-hmm. So he's finding a role that Coach Few likes and needs. I think he has an opportunity to gain more minutes, especially if like a Malachi doesn't play good or whatever, or if Rasheer's struggling. He's made a big jump as far as imprint on the game, if that makes sense. Like, sometimes his numbers don't jump out at you, but like if you watch the game live and you're there, like when he's in, you're like, yep, the energy, the level, the productivity of the team went up, like a plus minus thing. And then, obviously Ben Gregg has done great, finding that third big role. I mean, he was kind of buried in that, to explain to the listeners, there's always 3 bigs that play at Gonzaga. It wasn't always that way. Not when you played, probably. It wasn't when I played.
Yeah.
But now they play 3 bigs, and I think it's the right style to do. I do it at my coaching. I know at a way lesser level, but I play 3 bigs kind of the same amount of time. The quote-unquote a little bit better ones play a little bit more, but you're all kind of, you don't have to worry about foul trouble. Mm-hmm. You can do different matchups. You can do different things defensively. It just gives you so many options. So my point is that third big option was waiting for somebody to take either Efton or Ben Gregg, and Ben Gregg's done a good job of kind of grabbing that role. And that third big plays 12 to 20 minutes a night, usually around in the 16s. But if you play good, you might stay on the floor. But like I said, it allows you to not always be paralyzed with foul pressure. Obviously Ben's a pick and pop guy, so it gives you a different look. Anton's played great this season. Sometimes he gets in foul trouble just because of the things that have him do defensively. So you know what I mean? But he can still do those things without, you know what I'm saying? Those 2 guys have made great improvements. I thought Nolan's played pretty good for stretches this year, and we'll see about the rest of the guys.
Yeah, I think sitting courtside, one of the biggest things that I see with Ben Gregg is early in the season, his energy was resulting in fouls, where he was like a split second late with his decision, and then he still went for it and would get an over the back foul or late on a hedge. Now it's like his mind is starting to catch up with his energy level, and so it's all happening at the right time. So that's good to see. And then Hunter, defensively, he's one of those guys. Me as a ball handler who would bring it up, I wouldn't want to deal with him because some guys just have that like length to them, and they kind of bait you into going in a certain way, and they're just waiting with that inside hand on that cross. And his length is anticipation. He's going to get a lot of guys this year on that.
Yeah.
So
no, he's been fantastic.
Well, great. There you have it. Episode covering a little bit of the Huskies, both UW and Northern Illinois. We're going to be right back where we talk about the big return matchup with a top 5 team, Alabama, this weekend. For Adam Morrison, Dan Dickau, this is Gonzaga Nation SI.